Good evening, everyone. I would like to call this meeting to order at 6:33. Before I start, I would just like to say that if you're wondering why I'm sitting here, our mayor is not able to attend this meeting. Hopefully he'll be back soon. His wife is seriously ill, and of course that's more important than attending a city council meeting. So I ask all of you to please keep Sparrow praying in your thoughts and prayers, and I'm sure that'll work, and hopefully our mayor will be back here soon. So thank you for that. Okay. Well, do I see Nancy Horton in the back there?
Yes.
Listen, you've been called on for this in the past, and we don't seem to have somebody here who's willing to do the invocation. Would you mind?
I would love to.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem, did you announce the time the meeting opened?
I thought I did.
6:33. Thank you.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this magically beautiful place. We thank you for all the hardworking people who volunteer their time to make sure that everything here goes beautifully, including our city council. We thank you for those who have run for office, who are occupying office, and who work together for the good of our city. We thank you for all those who come to meetings, participate in the process, and understand what is happening in our city. We thank you for the city staff and all their hard work, for a new city manager, a new leaf, and we hope that everybody working together can make this place even better than it already is. Through our Heavenly Father, amen.
Thank you. Mr. Montgomery, would you be so kind to lead us in the flag salute?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Please join me. Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Bonner?
Here.
Councilmember Castillo? Here. Councilmember Smith?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Aaron Kranz?
Here.
Absent from tonight's meeting is Mayor Green.
Thank you. Looking for a motion for approval of the city council agenda.
I move approve the agenda. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Chamber of Commerce announcements. Mr. Randall.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. First off, I'd like to say on the 19th of June at 8 a.m., we're going to host a reception that I hope everyone can make it. It's for our new city manager, Chris Mann. And we'll be at the Cup Above. Coffee's free, but you get the exotic drinks and it's on you.
What's the date on that? I'm sorry.
It is June 19th. Secondly,
At the Cup Above.
at the Cup Above, right across the parking lot. On Thursday, June 27th, from 3:30 to 7, 15 Chamber of Commerce participate in a mega mixer down at the Marietta Spectrum on Madison and Marietta. If you've never been to one, I suggest you drop by. It costs you $1 or a business card to get in. You kind of get an overview of what all the other chambers are doing. They got vendors there giving out stuff, and it's like if you've never been, you really ought to go. Also, we're proud to welcome 2 new members. Fit Body Boot Camp, which is a neighbor to City Hall here, and the Canines, I beg your pardon, Canyon Canines, and that's at the Eastport Center. And we'd like to congratulate also our director, Jeannie Odell for a recent election to the POA board and being elected as treasurer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and the chamber office got new carpet yesterday.
Is Beth Stolziak here? Would you mind coming up, please? I have a presentation for you. This is a certificate of recognition for the Animal Friends of the Valleys. It says in recognition of receiving the Temecula Valley Chamber of Commerce Emerald Servers Charitable Organization of the Year Award and the Lake Elsinore Chamber of Commerce and Nonprofit of the Year Award. Hey, that's pretty impressive. Congratulations.
That's really impressive.
Thank you. Your turn for the win.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. And I brought with me along, this is Chief Middleton, who is the head of our ACO officers. And we have Jeanette Marie Massey, who is one of our board members, and Katie, who is our social media rep. So she's taking some pictures. But thank you so much. We really work hard at the shelter, and our mission, as you know, is really saving the lives of the animals. And the officers do a great job, and we do a great job in-house. But we want to thank you for all your help that you could help us with to help the animals. So thank you.
You're certainly welcome, and we're proud to be part of that organization. And we are aware of all the wonderful things that you do down there, so we can't thank you enough as well.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go into public comments, and if our clerk would read a little preamble for us, please.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any person wishing to address the City Council on any matter within the jurisdiction of the city, whether or not it appears on this agenda, is asked to complete a speaker request form available on the back counter. The completed form is to be submitted to the city clerk prior to an individual being heard by the City Council. The City Council has adopted a time limitation of 3 minutes per person. If you're commenting on the agenda item, your comments will be heard at the time that particular item is scheduled on the agenda. Please note that if you are addressing the City Council on items not on the agenda, the Brown Act does not allow discussion of such items. Therefore, the City Council may only do the following: refer the matter to staff, ask for additional information or request a report back, or give a very limited factual response. We'll start with Nancy Horton.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dear members of the City Council, when I read the list of objectives and strategic goals from the recent goal-setting event, I admit that I was distressed to find not one goal related to water. As you know, I served on the City Council for 6 years and on the EVMWD board for 4 years with a focus on water issues. Since I left the council, it seems there's a confusion as to the city's role in Canyon Lake. The city has a seat on the Lake Elsinore-San Jacinto Watershed Authority. It has that seat in order to protect the interests of Canyon Lake, the lake, in the watershed. The Total Maximum Daily Load Task Force also has a seat for Canyon Lake, the city, representing Canyon Lake, the lake. The specific interest of the CLPOA is their lake lease agreement, recreational use, and body contact, but it cannot have seats on any of those governmental organizations. The City of Canyon Lake was the lead agency in the CEQA document which preceded the grant for alum treatments for Canyon Lake. That purpose was to ensure that the EPA requirement of reducing phosphorus, nitrogen, chlorophyll A, and increasing dissolved oxygen in the lake would occur before the end of 2020. If those required reductions do not take place, LEJWA, the TMDL, and possibly member agencies could be fined up to $10,000 a day for as long as it takes to meet those requirements. The City of Canyon Lake pays to be a member of LEJWA, the TMDL Task Force, the MS4 permit, and the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. It has trained agents to step in when there's a spill in the lake. It has an ordinance to fine perpetrators who spill or pollute the lake. The city also has an ordinance against introducing quagga mussels into the lake with fines. Besides the issues of water quality for which the city is responsible, there is the looming issue of leaks. Nevada Hydro has an application with the Federal Energy Resources Commission to build a power project above Lake Elsinore. There is massive opposition to this project in Lake Elsinore due to fears of transmission lines in the Cleveland National Forest behind Lakeland Village and the possible effects on Lake Elsinore of removing approximately 2 feet of water at night to power the turbines and releasing that water in the morning. The important thing to know is that the water to raise the level of Lake Elsinore from where it is now, 1234, above sea level to 1240, which is the minimum required for the LEAPS project to happen, has to pass through Canyon Lake and go over the dam and through the valves at the dam. LEAPS will buy the water and EVMWD will provide the use of its conduit, Canyon Lake, and charge a fee of 10% for this service. When I served on the EVMWD board, I was adamant that this water must come from the Metropolitan Water District's Northern California supply. In the Valley News recently, I read that in a recent presentation for Citizens Against LEAPS, it was mentioned that the source of water for this project would be the State Water Project. That would include the Colorado River. I always represented Canyon Lake's interest in that we need water from Metropolitan and not the Colorado River. Why? Because the Colorado River is contaminated with mussels, the quagga mussel. Since 2009, the POA has had inspections of every boat coming into Canyon Lake to assure there were no quagga mussels in the bilge or on boat parts. If we get quagga mussels in Canyon Lake, our beaches are useless, our impellers of our boats cannot be turned, our hydro lifts will not work. These tiny razor-like mussels colonize on rocks, beaches, everywhere. If they get into EVMWD's intakes pipes for water treatment, EVMWD has always said it would hire divers, clean all of their pipes and valves, and charge
I'm
their
sorry,
customers.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, we've exceeded 3 minutes.
I'll finish. You can see why this is important. The Canyon Lake City Council is the only government agency that can protect us and our lake from this disaster. By speaking up at all meetings, LEJWA, the task force, leaps directly into the public. The City Council has a duty to prevent a tragedy. Put this goal on your list. Be vigilant whenever LEAPS makes a presentation. Make sure everybody understands the city will not tolerate this violation of our water quality and our way of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you for reminding me.
Next, we have Travis Montgomery.
I think I asked to speak on agenda item 10.
I apologize, we'll hold off on your comments until that item is called. That's all the cards I have.
That's all the speakers, thank you. Okay, the next we're going to go to the consent calendar.
All items listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine matters, status reports, or documents covering previous city council action. The items listed on the consent calendar may be enacted in one motion. With the concurrence of the city council, a council member may request that an item be removed for further discussion. Staff recommends approval of all items.
Thank you. Any council members have any items that they would like to pull?
I make a motion we approve all consent.
Hearing none, we have a motion to approve the consent calendar as written. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
I think we need to have a roll call vote for this.
Yes, Councilmember Bonner,
Yes. Aye.
Councilmember Castillo,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Aaron Kranz.
Aye.
Motion carried to approve the consent calendar with Mayor Green absent.
Thank you. Well, as written here, the notices of future events are located on the city's webpage and the Friday flyer.
Mayor Pro Tem, can I ask one question?
Certainly.
I thought Chris, I thought the joint POA, full POA in the city was June 19th.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up during city manager comments, but we can talk about that now if you'd like.
No, I mean, it's just, we're talking about future events.
Sure, sure. Yeah, so the city council and the POA board have been planning a second joint meeting. A number of dates were thrown out, and we had settled on June 17th. However, in the wake of the recent elections, new board members' schedules have come into play, and the 17th, that doesn't work on the POA's end at this point. We held a meeting earlier today with representatives of POA and had settled tentatively on Wednesday, June 26th. I understand that that date does not work for one or more of our council members. And so we would like to ask the council if Wednesday, except sorry, that'd be Monday, June 24th, would work for you.
That's something, you want to finish that discussion now then?
We might as well.
Okay.
It's in the evening.
Correct.
Works for me.
Yeah, it works for me.
Okay.
I have a hearing tentatively scheduled, and I may be able to have someone stand in for me, so
Okay.
I would say I'm a tentative.
Okay. Okay, and that would go into the evening?
It's a city council hearing,
Oh, okay.
just a different city.
Gotcha. Okay.
Councilmember Bonner, does it work for you?
Yeah, but I have legend implementation, but it's in the morning, so the evening will be fine.
Okay, very good. Then we will reach out to the POA first thing tomorrow morning and inquire about whether Monday, June 24th works for them.
And that would be in the evening?
Correct.
We could probably do it.
Okay, then we won't have to bring that up later at this time. Thank you, Councilman Bonner. Going to business items. The housing element, the preliminary draft, housing element for review and comment. Mr. City Manager, are you going to introduce that?
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sorry. We're going to go ahead and skip to item 9. We'll leave the housing element as your last business item, and that way it'll go right into the public hearing. So we'll go through 9, 10, 11, and 12, if that's okay with the council.
Anybody object to that?
I do, no, I'm just kidding.
Thanks, Terry. Thank you.
So we're going to 9 then?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a consideration and adoption of the city budget.
How do I?
Okay, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to ask our Finance Director, Terry Shea, to give this presentation.
Many moving parts. Your Honorable Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, City Staff. Since the last time at the workshop, I tell you, there's just a couple items that changed. We got the final numbers for the animal care, and then City Manager got word to me this week that the fire contract came down a little, and now it's $12,000. So there's a few changes in this. It's not quite as big as we thought it would be. So I'll go over the staff report real quick. Not an improvement here. Okay, so the budget predicts the 2019-20 budget. We're proposing general fund revenues of $5,186,725 and general fund expenditures of $5,871,000. And with the changes that I just mentioned, it lowers the proposed expenditures to $5,855,059 for a deficit of $668,334. And so there's a couple changes. One, I lowered the fire contract by $5,000. There was $12,000 for the consultant for the grants. And then Mike and the city manager asked me to increase the Christmas lights from $2,500 to $3,500 for that celebration. So those are the 3 changes from what you last saw. And those will be incorporated if you adopt those 3 changes. So it's good news on the fire. Not much more than last year, so that's really good news. So, okay. So there's a few items that are different this year, and so I'll go through those. Property taxes are going to be up about $54,000. That's based on the assessed value growth. Property tax VLF will be up about $42,000. That is also based on assessed values. $64,000 in fire structure fees, and that is also driven by assessed values going up. $11,000 in business license fees due to the increase in the fee from the recent fee study. And then for expenditures, the city manager's department, we're up $87,000 for salaries, benefits of $21,000. We're going to migrate the servers to the cloud for $10,000. Our joint power insurance costs went up $5,000. Hiring a grant consultant, which we're going to take that out now because we're going to use WRCOG. And then we're going to purchase new computers and monitors for staff because those haven't been updated in years. The city clerk's position, there's a decrease in the budget from last year by $2,000, which includes a decrease of $20,000 for election costs, no election this year. Offset by increases of $17,000 to digitize the records, and then there's an increase in salaries and benefits. The planning department is a decrease to reflect the current activity of what we're currently paying. The building and safety department is up because we went from a revenue sharing percentage of 67% to 95%, so that's a little higher. The law enforcement budget increased by $55,000 before transfers out to the CalCops fund of $120,000 in fiscal year. This year, we're going to transfer out $150,000 to the CalCops fund. Every year we get a true-up. We get the true-up in September, and last year's true-up was like $49,000, so there's a little bit extra for that. The fire budget increased by, this is before, I had estimated going to the non-municipal financing staff, and so this reflects what I estimated, but I was off by $5,000, so it's a little bit different. Increase the animal control budget by $12,430 in debt service costs and $11,000 in sheltering costs. And these are based on the prior year animal percentages to Canyon Lake, so this fluctuates every year. We increased the special enforcement budget by $57,000. Of this, $51,000 is for salaries and benefits. The big differences are increased hours and benefits for the supervisor. The code enforcement officer salary and benefits are now 100% charged to this department, whereas last year we charged Ruby part to city clerk and part to this department. Now it's all in that department. We increased the building and facilities maintenance budget by $49,000, which is made up of the following: rent for City Hall, $34,000, and then estimated additional utility cost of $16,000. Our special revenue funds, we have the gas tax fund, and there's a decrease in $38,000 in expenditures for the mulch project being complete. And then at this point, I guess just 5 minutes ago, we hired a new city engineer for streets. Yeah, I hope he's still here. So with that, should have a better idea midway through the year what we need, and may come back to council with a budget adjustment for streets. For the Measure A Special Revenue Fund, there's an increase in projected revenues of $12,000 and a decrease in $100,000 because all our debt will be paid off for the Measure A fund this year. The AQMD fund, there's nothing budgeted there. And then the law enforcement grants, there's an increase in projected revenues of $15,000 and expenditures of $11,000. So any questions on any of this?
Council have any questions?
All right, I'll go through the slides so the public can see. So here's the general fund revenue detail. You can see our biggest revenue is the UUT, followed by our fire structure fees and property taxes. So we predict about $186,000 increase in revenues this year. Any questions on any of these revenues? And then this is this by table. It's a little easier to see. You can see what makes up most of our revenues are property tax, fire structure fee, property taxes, and then the utility user tax. Hopefully interest income will start to go up. Here's our expenditures by department, and we have the 2 years of actual followed by last year's budget and then this year. And so you can see the general government, which is the city council, city attorney, city manager, city clerk, finance, and building are up from $864 to $985. A lot of those things we just went over in the staff report. The developmental services, those are up, and the big part of that is the building and safety for the new fee for the revenue sharing. And then we have law enforcement, which not up a lot here, but more was transferred over to the CalCops funds. And then you have fire, which is not a great increase from last year. It was, I think, 100,000 more, but it got lowered. And then emergency preparedness and animal control, you can kind of see the difference from 144 to 190 to 142, now to 150. So that's, thank God they provide us that information. So, and so you can see down at the bottom, public safety makes up 72% of our budget, which is typical for most cities. And then here's kind of like the pie chart for the expenditures. Any questions on proposed expenditures?
You're getting off easy so far, Terry.
All right. Get one chance, 3 minutes. And then revenue summary. John was very kind one time when I had an obvious formula error and he didn't point it out. He waited till after the council meeting, told me privately. So. And as soon as he said it, I'm like, oh darn. So yeah, revenue summary of all funds. So we have the general fund, which is our main operating fund. Gas tax, Measure A, only used on streets, landscaping and that kind of stuff. The AQMD trust fund, we spent some money last year, or 2 years ago, bought a vehicle. There's not a lot you can do with that money other than buy vehicles. The law enforcement grants, that comes with no strings attached. We use 100% of it each year to cover the cost of the sheriff's department. And then the capital projects funds, there is money available, but no projects planned. And part of that, with Charles Abbott would help with that, but so this hopefully, street engineers will help us there. Any questions on the other funds? And then this is the expenditure summary by fund. Most of the gas tax is landscaping, the water, the electrical for the lights, some patching, and then the signals, those contracts. And then Measure A, that's the remaining debt service, 46,000, and then we'll have all that Measure A available, no more debt service, so all the debt will be paid off. And then the law enforcement grants, that's for the sheriff's contract. And then here's our projected fund balance. It'll be a little bit higher now with that change. And so you can see all the special revenue funds are very healthy. And the available fund balance in the general fund is going to be at about 60% of 1 year's expenditures. And you don't usually want to drop too much below that. So. And then here's our general fund comparison for expenditures from the prior year. You can see the increases and the decreases. So overall, just a total of $307,000 in expenditures, which is about a 6% increase. I think last year it was like a 40% increase.
We have one question,
Sure.
Jerry.
Sorry, man, I'd let
Oh,
you
no
off that
problem.
easy. Couple things, so you said, roughly, that you use the term the 60% model. What's that time frame look like then, before we approach that?
I would say, one more year of a $600,000 deficit.
So running on the $683,000 deficit, we're about a 12-month window out from really
Yes.
big jeopardy, okay?
Because part of the problem is we don't get the majority of our revenues till December.
Right.
And we have to make payroll July, August, September. And so you always want to have at least 6 months of cash in reserves. So you don't want to ever drop below that. So.
Right. The other question I had is looking at the couple grants that we do have coming in, we do get the grant that's gone up from, I believe it was 109 to 120 to now 145 for law enforcement. Do we get anything for CAL FIRE? Does anything come in on that end? Any help?
No, I guess they would have to apply for it, kind of like our sheriff's department. They do apply for some grants, like they'll do the DUI enforcement stops, and they'll apply for the grants. So it'd have to be somebody from CAL FIRE, and I don't know how active they are with their grants. So
Okay, so no help there then, all right.
yeah.
That's all I have, thank you.
You asked my questions.
All right. And here's our public safety costs. And so you can see the change. Last year, you could see how much the fire went up, and that kind of drove the budget last year. And so this year is pretty flat. So if you look at 1920, it's only 1.4% because of the extra money in CalCops for police, 1.49% for fire, and then animal control 8. But the 8% on a littler amount is not as big. And so nothing crazy this year for increases, which is good. And then here's our major revenue sources. You can kind of see they've been going up steadily. Sales tax is hard to balance a budget on because you can see how far it is all over the place. And then last June, the state rolled out a new computer program and forgot to include all the major, like Home Depot, auto dealers, all the major retailers. And so cities didn't get any advances in June last year because of the state. And so those numbers are all over the place. Property tax is steadily growing. We've been averaging about 4% a year. Same thing for fire structures fee and same thing for the BLF. Those are all assessed value driven. And those are our 4 major, besides the UUT. Okay, here's our franchise fees, which not a lot of change. You can see it hardly changes year to year. And then the utility users, obviously the big year. But this year we're probably going to settle around $1 million. So it's kind of evening off and not growing like it was. Any questions on these major revenues? It's way too easy. That's it.
Thank you for your presentation. No other questions from the council? Okay, thank you very much.
Terry, you don't have an extra 680 grand lying around, do you?
Sure.
So we're returning to 8 now? Are we going back to business items?
Well, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, we will need
Oh,
approval of the agenda, but first,
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
I think we have a public speaker on this item, and the Deputy City Clerk is handing out a document that was provided to us by Mr. Zeitz, and he requested that we pass this item to the council.
Thank you.
I'm giving this to you so that you can have some reference. I'm going to ask a lot of questions, and I know you're going to want to write them down and answer them, and it's going to be too fast. So I gave you the questions so that you can select which one you want to answer when I'm through. But on the first page, you'll see in item A is a chart that was given by the city last year, 10 months ago, at the Measure S presentations. And the second one is a chart that I made using the projections that the city did and looking at where the fund balances go. So my questions now is, Councilmember Bonner, I remember you as mayor said we need to do 2-year projections, or at least 2-year projections. I don't see any projections. Why didn't you do a 2, 3, 4, or 5-year budget projection? Question 2. How much is the CalPERS liability? Do any of you know what the CalPERS liability is? Why do you not reserve for the CalPERS liability? My understanding is it's like $1.5 million. Why don't you reserve for that liability? So if the reserve for CalPERS should reduce the fund balance. So if it's $1.5 million, your $2.9 million is now $1.4 million, which is well below the 60%. I have given you a copy of the Canyon Lake financial projection, which was done in Measure S. This is the city website. This was on the city website for a short period of time. I guess it was removed because of what it showed. You lost 684,000, changed today here to 660 for 1920. what you're going to do either to increase income or reduce expenses. The original projections that they did last year showed a loss of $537,000 projected for this year, but it exceeded that loss by $130,000. How long can the city survive with the annual losses to fund balance? My chart, letter B at the top, shows that the city has an ending date. Why would you enter into a 5-year agreement for a new admin office when in 5 years you have no fund balance and liability debt to CalPERS? 8, you are spending a lot of money in 2019 that was not budgeted. When you do a comparison of the 18-19 budget versus actual expenses, that should be shown. Waiting for the audit in February of 2020 is too long. You should have something in August or September that shows what your budget was for 18-19 and what your actual was, not an audit. The city was proud to say that Measure S campaign that there was no increase in the percentage. I said the city will not survive unless the amount was increased to 8%. Do you plan to put this on the ballot in the near future? Those are my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Zeiss. You accomplished that in 3 minutes as well. I guess we're moving on to a motion to approve the budget
Yes, Mr.
and the
Mayor.
resolution.
We do have 2 resolutions. We have Resolution 2019-18 and 2019-19. So if we can have a motion and second to approve each resolution individually, please, and then we'll do a roll call on each one.
Would somebody like to make the approval of this resolution?
Yeah, I'll make a motion on the first one. Let me get back to the page.
It's 2019-18.
Yeah, approval of resolution number 2019-18.
Do I hear a second? No seconds. Pardon me?
I'm pulling up the resolution.
Sorry.
Right, correct.
Councilmember, if it's helpful, 2019-18 is approval of the budget. Okay, 2019-19 is approval of the salary and wage schedule.
I'll second.
Well, we have to do one at a time.
Yes, please.
We have a motion and a second for adopting the resolution 2019-18. We'll have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bonner?
Aye.
Councilmember Castillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Aaron Kranz?
Aye.
Motion carried with Mayor Green absent.
Now I'm looking for an approval of resolution number 2019-19. This is approving the salary and wage schedule for employees of the city for the fiscal year 2019-2020.
I guess this is until my evening. Approval of resolution number 2019-19.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Once again, we need a roll call, please.
Councilmember Bonner?
Aye.
Councilmember Castillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Aaron Kranz?
Aye.
Motion carried with Mayor Green absent.
Okay, the next item is item number 10. This is a cooperative agreement with the County of Riverside for fire protection services. And Mr. City Manager, I think you're going to introduce this item.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Thank you.
This item is the cooperative agreement with the County of Riverside for fire protection services, which are provided by CAL FIRE through CAL FIRE's contract with the County of Riverside. Our current cooperative agreement is set to expire at the end of this month, which is the end of the fiscal year, and we would be out of contract. And so this is a 12-month contract, which would end a year from now, June 30th, 2020. You heard kind of the numbers during Terry Shea's budget presentation. There has been a lot of discussion about this over the last several months. There is an understanding, I think, amongst all of us that these costs are not sustainable. Over the past few years, these costs have grown exponentially, starting when the county made the decision that all fire engines must be staffed by at least 3 personnel. That change alone raised the city's costs somewhere between $700,000 to $900,000 a year, and threw the city's budget into a structural deficit. That being said, the city has an obligation to provide fire protection services to its residents. And we have a legal obligation, a contractual obligation under current contract to give at least 9 months' notice to the county should we desire not to sign the next agreement. So we find ourselves today in a situation where our hands are relatively tied. We've had conversations over the past few weeks with our representatives from CAL FIRE in the county. We've expressed that this is not sustainable. We've explained the budget situation that we're in. And the responses have been one of an understanding. So staff at this time is recommending that we approve one more 12-year contract structured this way. And in the meantime, that we spend the next 3 months pursuing alternatives, other ways of structuring things, discussions with the county, with our neighboring cities, to explore other ways of providing fire protection services to the city. And that we have the information we need before that next 9-month period comes up, where we have to give notice one way or the other if we're going to restructure, or if we're going to terminate, or what we're going to do. So staff's recommendation at this time is that the council approve this agreement, and they enter into 1-year cooperative agreement for fire protection services with the county of Riverside.
And Chris, Mayor,
Yes, please.
we have to notify 90 days before the end of this contract before we're going to do next. Is that correct? By written agreement?
According to our current agreement that I signed, we have to give at least 9 months' notice if we're going to make changes to it, or if we're not going to sign the next agreement.
Oh, 9 months, not 3 months.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Right. Thanks for the clarification.
Discussion?
Yes, please.
Okay. In motioning to approve the budget on the last item, it's very hard to be here and be in the position where we are looking at such a significant deficit, and the majority of our expenditures in terms of public safety come from a $2.3 million fire contract. I'm grateful for the CAL FIRE members that protect our city. They come to the public safety meetings and generally report that about 86% of our needs in Canyon Lake are medical based. Obviously, you know, this is near and dear to my heart, something I do for a living. However, in looking at the past, where we had a 9-month closure in the 2015-2016 year, and the fire station closed for the 2016-2017 year, I don't know how we reopened the fire station, understanding that this would become an issue again, because our revenue basis has not changed. I'm very familiar with the charts that Mr. Zeitz has presented today, because I also had questions about them when I ran for this office. I knew that we were going to be facing a major uphill battle. I don't know that the rest of the city is quite aware. And to that end, I have serious concerns about signing this contract. Serious reservations, I will also add.
Mayor Pro Tem, if I may.
Yes, please.
You know, this is, I have to agree, just in the significance of this contract and what it does to the city. We're looking at a $680,000 deficit that I just can't swallow. So we've been busy, haven't we, Chris? We've been really busy the last, 30, 45 days. We've been meeting with anyone and everyone that'll hear our voice. We've met with Marietta. We've met with Lake Elsinore, Menifee. We're meeting with Calamasa. We've even come up with a couple ideas, you know, looking at different models that we could possibly utilize here in our community, since it is such a unique community and our needs are extremely unique. One of the ideas that we were able to propose, finding out that we are now in the high 80s, low 90s% for medical, looking at ideas that relate around the calls that Canyon Lake is having day in and day out is a crucial element to what I think we need to do as a community. One of those ideas was looking at a subcontract with AMR and having them service Canyon Lake. We're blessed because AMR is across the street in our business center right here with us, and they're looking at coming inside the gates. It looks like they're going to be able to make that happen, and that's a service that the county provides to Canyon Lake, and we can utilize that. But you know, I struggle with this as well because it's a tough pill to swallow, just because this doesn't come up again for another 12 months. And it concerns me that we're running this large of a deficit for how small our budget is. So.
Thank you. You know, this has been going on year after year after year. And we always have our backs up against the wall when it comes time to doing something in regards to the fire contract. And we usually, excuse the expression, cave in, sign it, try to buy time so that we can do something to change that. And we've talked about our own department. We've talked about AMR, something that apparently you've been able to accomplish that we couldn't in the past, because every time our councils talked about it, we were told that AMR couldn't come inside the gates. They had to be on a public street. So I commend you for getting that information, and I certainly hope that it's possible. But we still have a time frame problem that where are we going to get the protection if we don't sign this contract? I'm on everybody's side here. I understand the dynamics of the budget, but I'm not sure that we're prepared to do anything else. Last several years, and some of us will spend time talking to Calamasa about their program, and it always sounded interesting, but we just never did anything. We did a little research, and then it just kind of died, and I'm as guilty of that as any of the old council members. Well, maybe I'm an old council member also, but the previous council members. But I'm certainly not happy with the contract either. I just don't know what the alternative is. Right now, we're all aware of the medical needs. That goes without saying. We've been hearing these percentages for years. We've heard all the response times, and nothing serious has happened as a result of any of that. We're getting Menifee's getting a new fire station right around the corner from us here. Certainly that's going to make mutual aid even more affordable, hopefully. But we have to get together with our surrounding cities and ask them whether or not they're willing to participate in mutual aid. If we were just to support the fire station, which would not be a fire station, it might be an ambulance garage, for a better term to use. I would love to see that happen, but I'm not sure what the answer is. So I'm looking for guidance from anyone and anybody, including public comments. So if anybody would like to address the situation, we're willing to listen.
We do have Travis Montgomery that would like to speak on this item.
Mr. Montgomery.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. Travis Montgomery for the record. We've been talking about this for a long time ago. 5.5 years ago, I chaired the effort to pass the initial utility user tax, which was going to help solve these problems. It's now the largest single source of revenue that we have in the city. And what I'm hearing right now, diverting from my notes that I had down, is that, we may be looking at closing the fire station again. We just passed and went to the voters in the last year an unlimited extension in perpetuity of the utility user tax. You've got a real conundrum. How do you, 6 months ago, ask everybody to continue a tax forever and come back and look at closing the fire station? I kind of was getting encouraged a couple of years ago. We started hearing more. We're talking to other people. I've been expecting for the last 6 or 8 months to kind of hear some things. Yep, we're getting really close. And what I'm hearing tonight is we're not. We're still talking here, there, everywhere. And you've got 3 months and you have to decide whether this is a 2-year contract, really, if you want to look at it that way. Because if you don't take an action within the next 3 months, it's either over or you have to commit to 2 years. So you've got 3 months to really have to commit to 2 years. I don't know what you're going to do, but we've really gone out of our way to promise the citizens of this community through the utility user tax that we would provide city services. Now, it was not tied. It was very politically astute not to tie it. It was general services revenue. But I think one question you're going to have to answer is when we have this discussion, we just increased salaries by a significant amount in this budget. $80,000 in the city manager's office. And I don't know what all the elements of those are, and I'm not saying that critically. But as a citizen, to look at an $80,000 increase there and then be really, we're not crying wolf anymore. We got more than the wolf's head in the hen house. And I don't have any solutions either, but I did have a couple of earlier questions I would like to ask on this, just for clarification. And one was that it said in here, this estimate's based on maintaining a municipal staffing model, and then switching in 3 months, which would be September, to a non-municipal staffing model. And I don't know the difference between a municipal staffing model and a non-municipal staffing model. To my knowledge, we have to have 3 firefighters on a rig at all times, and that's, to me, a staffing model. So I would like to have that question answered if I could.
This is concerning the captain at the fire, and I think our city manager can probably explain it a little better than I can. But, so if you wouldn't mind.
Absolutely, sir.
Thank you.
So at the last time this council met, we approved a request to the county to switch from what we have currently, which is called municipal staffing, to what they call a non-municipal staffing level. Under the current staffing model, we have a captain on shift at all times. Under the non-municipal staffing model, we have one captain, and when he is off shift, the next highest ranking person on shift takes charge of the station. This request is the reason why our fire budget is only going to increase by about 1.5% this year, as opposed to 5.5%. So when we got the initial budget projections from the county, we were looking at an increase in our fire budget this year of about $125,000. So we've reduced that significantly through this staffing change. It's a great help to us in this year where we need to save money. As a result, the increase in our overall expenditures for the whole city is only 5.52% this year. I started this job, as you know, about 3 months ago, and one of the first things I noticed is that there were an awful lot of things that had been neglected here for many years. And so This council has been fantastic in authorizing staff to move forward to do things like upgrade our computers and move our physical, very old and could fail at any moment servers, move those to the cloud and digitize files and update our records retention schedule and the things you have to do to be a functioning city. All of that with the understanding that the real problem is our public safety contracts and that we have to solve that problem. So this move to non-municipal staffing is somewhat of a Band-Aid. It helps us save money this year and helps buy us a little bit more time.
Do I understand what that means? Is there just one captain for all versus one per shift?
Correct.
One station there, so the other shifts would be manned by engineer and lower ranked firefighters?
Correct, sir.
Well, I don't have anything else to ask. I guess I posed my questions and made my statements. We just have to, public safety is probably the top thing on the list that we have to do to maintain ourselves as a city. New computers and everything else, be damned, if we can't provide public service, we're in a big hole, a big problem. So, anyway.
Well, I can tell you that this council is dedicated to finding the answers. We've put it off for a long time.
Well, I know the dedication, or I think I know the dedication. I've been hearing it since we passed the initial UUT, and it just, boy, we got to get something done pretty quick. We just can't keep having everything on the come, or we'll have to go back and close the station like we did before, and that's going to be difficult to do when the voters came out and have supported you with the tax increase. I don't have the magic wand either, and I know where you can find it in a budget like that when 70-some% of your expenses are for these categories.
Yeah,
it's a
they have
problem
been for quite some time.
Yeah. Here to help, not to criticize.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that. Anyone else?
Mayor Pro Tem John Zeitz, 30279 Clearwater Drive, Canyon Lake, California, 92587. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I think you recall a few years ago that you and I sat together and we tried to do several things and trying to find a solution to that problem. I didn't find it, the council didn't find it, and it's a very difficult process to try and get a resolution. Talking to John Hawkins, the fire chief, we thought we could get the places, and we always thought we could get places every month, every year. We hired a city manager that had a connection to the fire, and he had connections, and he was going to do this, and year after year after year. Same thing Travis was talking about. We've talked about this for a long time, but we haven't resolved anything in that vein. And I was against the Proposition S, as you may well know. In my opposition was because that the city was lying to the people. The city told the people that if you pass this, you're going to have fire service. And there was a 75% vote for it. And my intuitive knowledge on that is that the people didn't vote for the tax, they voted for the station. I think that's what you said, Travis. They wanted the fire station there, so doing anything other than that is going against what 75% of the people, I believe, what they want. And as Travis says, you have a conundrum. You have a terrible conundrum. Because if you take a look at what you talked about, $2.9 million in reserves, $3 million, you take out $1.5 million in your liability, that you got $1.5 million. Next year, you're going to lose $600,000 again. And the year after that, $600,000 again. You're effectively broke. What can you do? And I know I was the disincorporation candidate. Not that, but I'm a practical person. The problem that you've got is that you have to disincorporate at a electoral year, which would be 2020. If you don't do it in 2020, you got to do it in 2022. 2022, you're going to be even $1.5 million more in the hole, liable to the people. The people are going to have to make it up if that happens. So your real conundrum is, what the hell do you do for the next 2 years? as Travis says, it's basically a 2-year program. I respect that you're going to try and do stuff. I mean, I spent a couple of years trying to do that, and other people have spent time after that trying to do that stuff, and we're successful. So you got 2 years of losing $1.2 million. So where do you really go? I don't have the answers. I thought 4 years ago, or back in 2015, I thought we had the answers, and I thought Hawkins was going to go for it. And every year, every month after that, we all thought we had the answers and where it was going to go. And we didn't. But we have to be rational and look at this.
Mr. Zaitz, you dropped your glasses over there on the side.
Thank you.
If I may, just add a couple of things. First of all, the mention was mutual aid. Mutual aid doesn't come free. If you can't reciprocate, then you can't join in with mutual aid. If we close the station and so on, we don't have the ability to reciprocate with reference to mutual aid, and you would have to pay every time they respond to our location. Is it an easy problem that you have? No way. And I don't know, and I know John worked on it, and I worked on it, and everybody else, and we had all kinds of approaches. And it hasn't been successful. The only thing that's been successful is to tax our own people as to whether they want to do it or not. You may be in that position now. You may have to come back to the people and say, hey, do you want to keep the fire station or not? If you don't want to keep it, fine. Then it's going to cost you with reference to response from the outside stations. You know, I don't envy your position, but I certainly don't have the answer, but I know what's going to happen if we don't do something. And like he mentioned, we got a couple of year program going, and you're going to have to come up with some answers there. But if you think the mutual aid is going to just cover you, that's going to come out of your pocket. Okay.
Any other speakers?
No other speakers?
Well, I do have another comment or two, if I may. We did have mutual aid, Jack, as you recall, when we didn't have the fire department here, when we were under the emergency ordinance, and we were paying Menifee and we were paying Elsinore for their services, and it turned out to be, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, to be cheaper than what our expenses were for having a fire department at that time. They were willing, eventually they were willing to help, and they provided the mutual aid, which there was, the occurrences certainly weren't what everybody had magnified them to be, with all due respect to the fire department that's out. Gentlemen are here in the audience. You know, we were able to cover everything fine as far as the medical was concerned. This was when we had our backs up against the wall again. We had to sign an emergency contract with the county. They provided it for, I think it was 3 months at the time, and then we got things back in order. Mr. Zeitz says that, and Mr. Montgomery also. Well, I certainly agree. The public deserves maybe a little better explanation of what we did, but it was a Band-Aid when we first passed the UUT tax to get us to the point where we are today. Perhaps another Band-Aid is going to be necessary, but I have the feeling, I haven't had this before, that concessions are going to be made by the county, which never happened. When Hawkins was a fire chief, it was a waste of time. We talked to him on so many different occasions. There were no negotiations with the CAL FIRE, but I think there's going to be now. And I don't have a crystal ball, and I'm just being optimistic, and I'm thinking that this council is going to work very hard to make something happen, and I hope to be a part of that. So that's really what my comments on the subject. Anybody else here? Okay, I guess I'm the only one that's running off at the mouth now. Okay. Yes.
I don't have a motion to sign the contract. I have a motion to put this on for a special meeting. One that I think we could have more community participation at and publicly encourage citizens to come to before we sign this. Because I think everyone should have it real clear what the circumstances are. I recall reading in the Friday Flyer a State of the City address. I don't think it was accurate, and I'm concerned that there are members of this community that just do not understand the significance of what we're doing today. I think otherwise this room would be packed.
Point of clarification, City Attorney. In doing this idea of doing a special meeting, we would have to allow enough time for the public, obviously, to be aware of that. We're also in a time crunch in regards to this contract. If we did something, I mean, I'm trying to, process the information in my head right now, but I like the idea of getting an opportunity for the people to see exactly the numbers and what we're dealing with. If we have enough time to do that is my question. So
sure. In terms of when the county needs the contract to get it on their agenda to get it approved, that might be a better question for the city manager who has those conversations with the county. The answer is legally they can approve it at any point.
Okay.
In the past, they've had it even on the agenda the day before the contract was set to expire. My experience with county government has generally been that they want as much lead time as possible so that they can properly vet it. That being said, this is their contract that they gave to the city, so I don't necessarily think they need a lot of time to vet it, but they do probably want lead time. Chris may be able to answer that. In terms of your question on the special meeting, we need 24 hours notice to hold a special meeting. But if the intent, as Councilmember Castillo has stated, is to get community involvement, you may want to give more notice than that.
Right.
And you may also want to direct staff to do some kind of public notice in addition to the agenda itself to try to get people to come. But from a legal standpoint, 24 hours notice on the meeting and up to the date that the contract expires from a contractual point of view.
From a staff point of view, that's certainly something we could do. I do know that the County Board of Supervisors needs time after this body approves the contract. This needs to go to the Board of Supervisors for approval, so they need a little bit of time to do that. If the council's desire is to have a special meeting, I would recommend that we move very quickly. If we could put something together even for Monday of next week, I think that would be ideal. First thing tomorrow morning, we could notice it, even though we don't need to notice until 24 hours before. I think in this case, the sooner the better. We could contact the Friday Flyer right away, first thing in the morning, to let them know what's going on, and we could be ready to go as early as Monday if that's the council's desire.
The reason why, I think all of us up here agree this is the largest contract that the city signed, hands down. Might be their smallest, but it's our largest, right? I'm a huge fan of CAL FIRE. They've been great for our community. And it's unfortunate that we can't afford it. And it's a tough pill to swallow, like I keep saying tonight. But I think if we at least do a special meeting, we could present this to the community and show the folks exactly what we're dealing with, because this won't come back for another year. And it's right now, it's right in front of us. So I think it's an important issue that needs to be as transparent as we possibly can be through the whole process. So I would second that idea if my colleagues would agree with doing a special meeting next week.
I agree with you. but my problem was is the roundtable is Monday, but that could be rescheduled, okay? But I have a doctor appointment and I got enough problem, dermatologist, I just had, so I don't know what time you're talking about having that, but we're only gonna have one day between now and Monday, we're gonna be working tomorrow. So are we gonna be able to make that announcement to the public to know that, to come to this meeting? I don't think you have enough time.
From a staff perspective, we have time to notice the meeting, and but most of the city staff work.
Well, we wouldn't get in the Friday Flyer. The Friday Flyer is 2 days from now.
Well, we can, I'm sure they'll be willing to post online, social media, so can we, to get the word out.
What did you want to say, Jack?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to throw something out at you. I think we're in a position where you've got to go back to our people with reference to the tax. You've got to say, okay, if you want to keep our station, the tax will be this. If you don't want to keep the station, then you have to go to CAL FIRE and you would ask them, what are you going to charge us if we respond with Station 5 and Station 94 to cover our city? And also the station out on the, got 3 stations around. Station 5 now covers the Eastport area. Station 94 covers where I live and covers where you live.
Main Causeway.
Right. And I don't know, if you close our other station, then I would recommend that you go to CAL FIRE and say, hey, look, if you do that, how much would you charge us to cover us with the other stations? And the response time with Station 5 and 94 to cover the other side probably would be somewhere around maybe 10 minutes or maybe a little more. A national, it's been a long time since I've been in the fire service. The national time, I think, is somewhere around 10 minutes, and the fireman can correct that if it's it. But I don't think Station 5 can respond and make within that as you're going over by the campground, but they may be able to. But still, you would get a reduced price and maybe something that our city could operate with. But I'll just throw that out as food for thought and see what you can do with it.
If I may, can I?
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I would just want to make a point. I think that is a well-taken point. At the public safety meeting on Tuesday, we were given documentation from CAL FIRE that a medical call off of Big Range, which, as you know, is over by the campground, had a 13-minute response time, and the engine came from the Rosetta Canyon station.
Came from where?
97 Rosetta Canyon.
Oh,
not R60.
Right.
So I think your point is well taken.
Well, you never know. You got the same thing with AMR. You might get a response from AMR, may come out of Elsinore.
Right.
And a lot of people don't know it, but he may not be a paramedic.
Well, Jack, are we going to have enough time to get an answer that you're asking by next Monday?
In answer to your question, no.
I mean, that's what you're trying to get, a sense of urgency to get a meeting. And I agree with you, but I don't.
It would take time for CAL FIRE to put that together and give you an answer cost-wise. I'm not an advocate of that at all. I personally, and been in the fire service for 50 years, I personally would rather up the tax a little bit and keep our station. But that's just my opinion, and you would have to present that to our people. Maybe our people wouldn't want to do that. I don't know that.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, if I may.
Yes, of course.
I think what's being described here is something worthy of being looked at. I think it would require agreement and cooperation between the city and the county, and also our neighbors, like Elsinore and Menifee. It's certainly not an answer we'll have by Monday, but we certainly could have these kind of discussions in a very public setting on Monday. Our hope is to work very diligently with the surrounding cities and with the county on finding, and with CAL FIRE on finding a solution within the next 3 months before where we have to give notice one way or the other on the contract.
Excuse me, if you let Jack talk without a note, then you have to let me. I was on the council during the period of time where we had to close the station. All the documentation of the times from Station 94, Station 5, and Station 97 were placed on a map of Canyon Lake with the exact times that they said it would take to get to the various areas. When we closed the station, it just so happens that I live in the area which we call by the North Gate, and we lived in absolute fear that somebody in that area, which is slightly less than a third of our city population, would die because a stroke or a heart attack should be responded to within 5 minutes. And 97 can't get there anywhere close before 12. And that's if everybody's ready to go and move. Chief Hawkins used to say it was terrible responding to a fire in Canyon Lake because our streets are so full of parked cars and trailers and boats that they have to go slower than they do in most cities. And so we have to provide for golf carts moving in and out, baby carriages, dogs. It's harder to respond to a fire in Canyon Lake. So we did this already. All this information has been provided prior to the first time that we passed the UUT. Everybody understood what was at stake in reopening the fire station. And thank God we didn't have any serious emergencies. There was one death of a lady on Big Range who was 84 years old. She had a massive heart attack, and her husband graciously wrote a letter to the city and said she couldn't have been saved even if the response time was better. But any time we could have a heart attack where the person could be saved with a better response time. And we don't have that in the north area. Should you make the decision to go with Lake Elsinore and Menifee as your service providers. So we're back to the exact same thing. Do we not count those of us at the North Gate? Do our lives not matter? I think they matter. And I also think that we should never say that we can have a meeting next Monday and that social media will take care of all of letting everybody know. We need to at least provide for 1 week's notification to the Friday Flyer so that it can be in print. Not everybody in this city uses social media or even computers. So you are disenfranchising people that should never be disenfranchised. The very people who care the most about our fire protection, those usually older people who don't understand how to use computers. So I disagree tremendously with trying to get this meeting next Monday. If you want people's input, do you only want the input from people who are on Facebook? I don't think so. You want everybody. So you can't do it that quickly. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it. If you need this input, I've had this input. Jordan and Randy have had this input. Other members of the council have had this input. It's the history of our community. If you need it all over again and you need it from newer people, fine. But give all of us the opportunity to hear when the meeting is going to be held and to get here if they want to come. So we're right back in the same exact position that we were before the UUT was passed. I think you will hear from people that some of the expenses that you have approved that were not related to public safety will not go over well, including a new expense of moving City Hall. When we had to make those tough decisions that we had,
I think this time, Nancy.
and we had a $500,000 deficit, we reduced our city manager. We didn't have an assistant city manager. We reduced staff. That's what you're going to hear.
Thank you. May I just one moment, Mr. Travis, I just wanted to say something. I think everybody's just being maybe a little bit presumptuous. We haven't said we're closing the fire station. We said we are exploring every avenue that we can. And I'm sure that all of us here would like to keep it open as much as everybody out in the audience. I have merely commented, and I get the feeling and I'm not gonna brag about myself, but I think there's negotiations that can be achieved that we weren't able to do before. As recently as yesterday or the day before, I heard for the first time the city of Placentia in Orange County, the first city in Orange County, is thinking about doing away with their fire services and opening their own fire station. There are a lot of avenues that we've yet to travel, and none of us here are going to jeopardize the safety of the city. I think the contract is, I mean, I can agree and disagree with you that we have to have the coverage. There's no question about it. We have to be prepared to tell the citizens what we're going to do if we don't sign that contract. And I think that's why we're talking about putting a meeting together, which I agree, it's a little short notice to try and do it this Monday. But if anybody has a better suggestion, I certainly want to hear it. And I think that from Mr. Montgomery, please come.
Well, we've only got 3 weeks, and then what do? My suggestion is that we bite the bullet and use the 3 months that we have to re-notify them whether or not we want to continue the contract as the time within which you do this. Don't rush it to the people. You're not ready to take it there Monday, you're not ready to take it there Wednesday, you're not ready to take it there Friday. You've got too many questions. A lot of good ones have been raised here tonight. Go ahead and explain to us why you had to go ahead and extend this contract now. But our fish and cut bait date is October 1. We've got 90 days to make the decision of where we're going. Eat it for this year. Our backs are up against the wall. But take those 90 days and make them a rigid time for yourselves to get something done to where you can go to the people in 60 days and say this is what it is. They'll still have service for a year, the rest of that year, but you'll have time to plan how to get out of it or have a lot better feel for whether your prophecy that something great might happen or some other things. But I don't think any precipitous action right now by me is going to do much, because you got July 1st coming, and I can't imagine that you're going to close the fire station on July 1st if 10,000 people come in here and say, nope, we don't like it, don't do it. You're going to keep it open for a year. Make that your deadline, but use that 90 days that you have for the second year of commitment as your time to really get something down and put it up against your back and go with it. That's my suggestion.
Thank you.
I want to do it first. I agree with Travis and Jack.
I may be wrong.
Okay. Well, you better sit down while you're ahead.
I never made an error, you know that.
Councilmember Castillo, I respect what you're trying to do. I don't understand it. I don't understand that you can go to the people and ask them anything. You have nothing to answer with at this point. But let me just finish, because I was going to do this fast. 75% of the voters said they want a fire station. You've got a mandate. You really have no choice. Your choice is what Travis talked about and what you're going to do in the next 3 months after that to keep it open or do something else or put on, as I had in my number 9 question, are you going to go for an 8% public utility tax, which is still an option. And so you can look at that. But I think you've got the mandate. If you go to the people and they come in here and you're going to say, do we sign this? And they go, okay, what's the option? You don't have one.
If I may, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but we have a gentleman here from Supervisor Jeffries' office who has been, Supervisor Jeffries is involved with this all the time. You don't have to say anything, you don't have to answer, but would you like to validate some of the things that I've said?
Having listened to the conversation, and I am speaking
might wanna-
mostly on my
you might wanna
authority
inter-
right now. I am the Chief of Staff for Supervisor Jeffrey.
Good.
My name
Thank
is
you.
Jeff Green with an E on the end. It's my understanding, as Chris has said, that you have to give a year's notice if you're not going to renew this contract. So you've already missed the window to not renew this one. But in renewing this one, you've got a 90-day window before it's basically too late not to renew the following one. So it would seem to me that the best option before you is to renew the contract you're obligated to sign now. Though certainly you have the right to breach it if you wish. I mean, there's always ways to handle those sorts of disputes, so I'm not telling you what to do. My suggestion would be that legally you kind of got to do this one and then use the 90 days to hold a legit community meeting where you have time to negotiate, as you've mentioned, with the new management and the new board. I mean, the board very often is kind of hogtied in this because it's CAL FIRE we're dealing with too.
Right.
But it gives you the time to develop those opportunities like the ones Councilman Smith has talked about with AMR, or whether it be an independent station or whether it be attempts to get further concessions from CAL FIRE. That 90 days gives you the opportunity to have that kind of presentation with the community and notify the community and make that your real deadline, because legally that appears to be what it is by contract. So, I mean, if I have any of that wrong, I'm happy to be corrected, but that would be really all I have to say on the subject.
Could you get Kevin to loan us?
Well, thank you.
So our budget workshop is Monday night, and CAL FIRE's getting a cut. So as is just about everybody else in the county, we're very sympathetic to the problems you have here at Canyon Lake. We've got a serious deficit of our own we're dealing with, and some very serious cuts in a lot of departments, and next year is going to be even worse. So we're very sympathetic to the problems going on here, and desperately trying to find solutions for our own, part of which includes doing a better job of recovering all of our costs in city contracts. So I'll leave you with that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, if I may.
Yes.
I would suggest this. I think, what has been said here tonight has been some really good information. I think it's important that we look at all the options, and I commend Councilwoman Castillo in the idea of bringing this to the people and allowing them to come forth and share their ideas as well. I also agree with Nancy in regards to allowing enough time, because it is a pretty tight window. If we wanted to do this, it'd have to be an additional week. I don't know if we have enough time, city manager, on that, but I do think it needs to be published in the Friday Flyer, and people need to come forth. But it leaves us right where we're at. Like you always say, Jordan, our hands are tied behind our back and we're up against the wall, and this is where we're at. I don't think this council, and I speak on behalf of myself, I don't believe this council has any intent whatsoever to close down that station. Look at other options. Look at putting AMR in that station, looking at a subcontract, looking at a mutual aid agreement, looking at our own station. I don't think, at least for myself, want that station closed. It's there. It's a beautiful facility that the POA lets us utilize for $1. So I think that's the direction that this council, at least what I've seen since I've been here, 4 months, 5 months, that we want to do everything we can. Unfortunately, what was passed, 75% wasn't enough, and it just wasn't. And now we have to look at ways to be creative, and there's only so much that I know I've been able to do in a 4-month window to try to come up with solutions to the problem that's before us tonight. So my suggestion would be this, that if this council decided to move forward with a special meeting to look at the contract with CAL FIRE, that we would allow enough time to get it in the newspaper. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. City Manager, there's no negotiations with CAL FIRE, is that correct?
Well, that might be a little strong, but I mean, this contract is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yes.
So the numbers that's before us is exactly what we're dealing with, and there's just no way around that. The only thing that we would get out of a special meeting would be a meeting that is only about that item, that would be out to the people, that they could see the concerns and issues that we're facing as a council, as a community, as a city. And that would be the rhetoric, right? That would be pretty much the entirety of it.
Well, the direction of that meeting would be up to the council.
Mm-hmm.
From a staff perspective, we can certainly provide any information that the council likes. We can present all the facts and figures and numbers. Ultimately, as has been discussed at length tonight, our hands are really kind of tied on this particular contract. I'm not sure that it changes the outcome of what the council does on this particular item. We have a larger discussion in front of us, which is how to fix this problem moving forward. Whether the best way to start that conversation with the public is to have a special city council meeting prior to approving this contract, that's a decision for the council.
But Chris, if, I think Travis said October 1st is the time we have to, are we gonna use by a week or 2 weeks, or we're gonna move, to take some of that time away from us? For the 3 months to start working the problem if we don't agree today?
Well, I mean, we're currently working on the problem, so we're not waiting for anything.
Yeah, but I think the sense of urgency now has really gone to a new level, which is good for our public. And we, the city council, in my opinion, all are on the same page. We want to get this thing resolved and get beyond it. But I'd like to take the full 90 days. I don't want to lose any more time.
Sure.
One more?
Yes, sir.
Richard Seams. Do you need my address? Guess not. So my suggestion is if you call a special meeting now, you will spend the next 3 months doing damage control for whatever comes out of that meeting, because it's going to cause a heightened sense of anxiety, and you're going to be dealing with a lot of things that you don't want to deal with, that will prevent you from actually doing what you need to do in the next 3 months. So my opinion is that you should do as Jeremy just suggested, but then also set yourself a timeline for the next 3 months in agreement with Councilman Bonner, that so you actually do it. You have to do it. In fact, one of the ways to force yourselves to do it is to sign the contract and immediately give notice that you won't sign the next one. Then you don't have an option. Then you don't have 3 months, you have 9 months, and it's dropped dead. I'm not suggesting you do that, but I'm suggesting that you cannot play political games with this.
Thank you.
I'd like to make one quick statement, just a point of clarification for the discussion. My name's Todd Williams, I'm Deputy Chief, CAL FIRE, Riverside County Fire.
Sir, can you?
Sorry. A little better there? Councilor Bonner, thank you. Point of clarification, your contract is specifically with the County of Riverside, not with CAL FIRE. So you can negotiate with the County of Riverside. CAL FIRE provides the SMEs for the fire department. That is who the contract with. Your conflict is not with CAL FIRE. We control none of those negotiations. You negotiate strictly with the County of Riverside. That is who your contract is with. So I just want to clarify that for a point of discussion. Thank you.
Well, that's interesting, because we used to have to address the fire chief or Chief Hawkins all the time before we ever could get started with anything.
And he's also served as the county fire chief, as Sean Newman does now, so he wears 2 hats, the CAL FIRE unit chief, and also acts as the Riverside County fire chief, so he can act on behalf of the county also in that status for those negotiations on the county's behalf as the county fire chief. So I know it's confusing sometimes, but that's how that functions.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure exactly what we're going to do as far as Councilwoman Castillo wants to do.
My motion stands. I think we should have an informational meeting. I'm not necessarily, as Mr. Zeitz suggested, asking for the citizens to come with the answers for us. I think we're working very diligently on different options. I just don't know that the entirety of our city is aware that we are even at this place.
So are we going to table this contract at this time for further discussion? Is that what I'm hearing?
For how long?
I don't know.
I think that's to be
We
part of
can't
the
take too
question.
long.
I think that's to be part of the question. Are we talking about Monday, or are we talking about a week from Monday, or 2 weeks?
Mr. City Manager, I think my second on Casey's motion still stands.
could I ask for clarification on the motion, or is it specific to hosting a special meeting on a particular day?
The day, I think, was not part of my motion. I believe that was part of Councilmember Smith's discussion in terms of making it available to the constituents by method of having it posted in the Friday flyer as Ms. Horton suggested.
So could you restate your motion then?
My motion is to have a special meeting. We have an entire agenda today. I think obviously, as this has been stated, this is the biggest contract we are going to sign as a city. And I think it deserves special attention. I think the public should have the opportunity to, I mean, we've heard from multiple people tonight. I imagine there are some other people who have input, and then I think we can move forward. But lumping this in on a long agenda when it is this important and we are at such a high deficit, and obviously public safety is this council's #1 goal, I think it deserves more attention.
So if I understand what you're saying, you and Councilman Smith, that you want to not sign this agreement at this time.
That is my motion. My motion is to have a special meeting to continue this discussion.
Which would gain input as to whether or not you would want to sign the agreement.
That's correct.
I understand it correctly.
Okay, if I might suggest, I think it'd be helpful if we had a better understanding of how much time we have here. If we were to hold a special meeting, we're hearing that Monday might be too quick in terms of getting the word out. If we were to look at a week from Monday, which would be the 17th, is that a date that would work for the council, and is that a date that would give the county enough time to do what they need to do with the contract? And I don't know if Mr. Green from the supervisor's office can address that, or...
I don't know exactly how much time we might need for one, but I will say that we do have a meeting on June 25th. So we do have one the last week of June that would be available to approve a contract if that's what the deadline is. I don't know the specifics of when we would have to approve it. I do know in the past we did place a contract on the ballot, preliminarily on the agenda before it was actually approved, just to make sure it was heard. So if you wanted to have yours in that time, you would be able to do so. I did just want to add one more thing to what I was to my earlier comments, just that Supervisor Jeffries has always encouraged cities to look at all of their options in public safety, both for sheriff and fire. So we're not trying to push you into any decision one way or the other here. We're glad you're looking at this. It's your responsibility to look at this. And so when I was suggesting that because of the timeline that you need to do, that wasn't saying that because you need to stay with us. It was just timing wise, that would be what I was thinking. But he has always encouraged you to look at whatever best deal you can get. So thank you. Thank you.
That being the case, I guess staff's recommendation would be that we look at Monday the 17th to do the special meeting. If it's the council's direction that we have a special meeting.
Well, that works for me. I used to have something to do on that day, but I see that was changed.
That's right.
Works for me.
In that case, if we could maybe have that as a motion, kind of wrap it all up, and then a vote.
You want to move that?
That's fine. I'll make a motion that a special meeting be heard on the 17th of June, which is a Monday, a week from Monday,
And for the purpose of?
for the purpose of discussing agenda item 10.
Okay.
Just continued it to that date.
Basically.
That's the motion. Continue this item to that date.
Date's okay. Okay, well, we have the motion, and I believe you second that motion.
Second.
Okay. And all in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carried, thank you. Okay, we're going, anybody need a break? No? Okay. And we're moving on to Item number 11. Adoption of resolution number 2019-20, updating city rates, charges, and user fees for commercial filming permits along with the CPI escalator.
Good evening, City Council. Tonight I'm bringing forward a adoption of a resolution that we brought back on May 1st with regards to updating our city rates, charges, and user fees for what used to be the special events permit and commercial filming. If you recall, at the May 1st meeting, council moved forward with the special events permit. However, council had asked us to look further into the commercial filming permit to see what is it that POA was doing with regards to commercial filming. In meeting with POA, they pretty much have said that they do not allow any commercial filming behind the gates. So they do not have any sort of fee structure in place with regards to commercial filming. So staff is just bringing back, again, asking for council to adopt the commercial filming permit that was previously presented.
Questions? Questions of staff?
And just to clarify, that commercial film permit was previously 150 and it's going to be 307 if council approves.
Any public comments?
Why the increase?
I'm sorry?
Why the increase? The substantial increase? What's the price? It was how much?
It was 150 before.
Okay.
Now it's 307. It's sort of a combination of, when we did the fee study, we looked at the amount of administration time it took for that process of that fee. When we did the fee study, it's more accurate to what our currently costs would be for all the different entities that are required to approve the permit. So it's more accurate. You know, it's at 100% cost recovery basically. Whereas
Okay.
before in the past it really
So that's cost, that's bottom line then?
Yes.
Okay. And I'll recommend this to council. My only concern with this is that currently the POA doesn't have a fee at all, right? They have nothing, they have no process. And this is where it gets difficult, right? Because they could easily implement one and they could put one in place, and it'd be important, in my opinion, to make sure that we don't overcharge the client, right? So they go to the city, they pay this amount, they go to the POA, they have to pay this amount as well. It'd be nice to break bread on this one too and come together, but the POA has nothing in place right now. So as of today, this is our direction, and we kind of have to wait and see if they decide to do something, if we do get something that comes forth.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any public comments?
I do have a card for Jack Wamsley.
I think.
Yeah, Welty,
I'll call
the card. Just kind of, the POA doesn't really have a position because we really haven't had a credible offer. And our fee structure would be based on use, and our critical element is we can't have the appearance of a commercial activity, or we have a limited ability to appearance. If somebody came to us and said they wanted to use one of our rooms in the lodge, say, there may not be a commercial external experience there. So we could probably do something like that. Beyond that, with in the parks or somewhere like that where there was a lot of activity, we would probably restrict it. But the reality is we've never had a credible company come, so we've never felt the need to dedicate a whole lot of time toward developing the fee, which may never happen. So the door isn't closed, the door isn't open, it just, we have not had any real experience in somebody really committed. Just to give you a heads up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Walmsley, I believe you're up again.
Oh, boy. Well, basically, I don't know whether Chris is giving you all the information that I've given to him with reference to filming. What I did is I went to the 4 major cities that do filming in LA County, and I got all of their procedures, their costs, and I've been working with Chris on that for the past month, I guess. And That way you can kind of take a look at what you have, or what they have, I should say, and more or less form your own program. My recommendation was that we work with the POA, and I have given the same information that I gave Chris. I've given that to Eric with the POA. And those 4 cities have a program, and they've been doing film. They probably do the most films in Southern California. And that's the reason I picked them. I worked with them for years, and they were very, very nice about sending that information to me. They were a little reluctant to do it, but we got it done. And I think that when the council looks at that and sits down and puts it together, I think you could have a good program. My recommendation as to working with the POA is to make it simplified for the location manager. And for instance, if you have the location managers come out, and I'll go over that with you in a minute, but the location managers come out, and if you can simplify a thing and say 1 permit, or 2 at the most, depending on where they're filming, then that makes it easy for them, and that would make them come out more, and you would maybe end up with some finances. One of the things that I did do is, in fact, I just talked to Hollywood, Ed, the head of the film division in Hollywood. I talked to him this afternoon, and we were talking about, I said, well, you know, how much income are we talking about? And he said, well, he said, it varies tremendously. He said, we, in some cases, like in Malibu, you may have 50,000 in 1 year and 300,000 the next. So there's no guarantee as to what your income would be off of that. Is the income all profit? No. They've got a lot of things there. You'll set up and charge them for doing certain things, but it is lucrative. First of all, the question is, well, we've never had anybody come out. Well, the reason you've never had anybody come out here is because you don't advertise. If you want to get into this, and I went over this with the city manager, you've got to advertise. And there is a place, that you can list your location. You list Canyon Lake. You show what we have. You show the parks. You show the BLM property, and so on and so forth and so on. That way you get the location managers to come out. They'll take a look, and that's the way that you get moving into that business.
Mr. Wamsley, I have to enforce our 3-minute rule.
Okay.
I thank you for the update.
I didn't time my watch.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, if I might.
Yes, of course.
Just a reminder that what's before the council today is simply the fee. The council went through the process of doing a fee study last year, and we're getting to adopting the various recommendations that resulted from that study. This is one of them. When this came to the council, it kind of spurred a larger discussion about should the city have a filming ordinance? Should the city work with the POA to make sure that combined fees make sense? Jack has been very gracious to help us find lots of information from cities that have ordinances. I have a file of all that information. As you might imagine, staff is working off a very long to-do list right now. And so staff's recommendation is that we go ahead and adopt the fee as we're getting to this evening, as we're getting all of our other fees together, and that at a future date, when some of the more pressing matters are checked off of our list, that we revisit the possibility of having a filming ordinance.
I don't think this fee is that exorbitant. I doubt that anybody is even going to come to apply for a permit. I wish that they would, but it's going to be pretty rare that this is going to take place. I don't think anybody would object to that amount of money to pay. And to you, Jack, I think that Canyon Lake is well advertised on a website, and BOA does a pretty good job of listing all their, I didn't say that, get back up.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, if I may.
You're not advertising in the right spot.
Okay.
You get the right advertising on the wages and so on, otherwise it works.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
Incidentally, on the BLM, you have to have a separate permit for them, and there's a lady that takes care of their permits. She'll be at our luncheon on the 19th.
Is he up for 4 minutes now? Is he up for 4 minutes now?
Councilor Smith, yes, please.
I just want to simply make the motion to adopt resolution number 2019-20. And I also want to say thanks, Jack, for all the work that you've done on this. I know you've supplied Chris with a bunch of paperweights, so with all the information that you've done, so we appreciate it.
I second.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. I guess we need a roll call vote on this as well.
Councilmember Bonner?
Aye.
Councilmember Castillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Aaron Kranz?
Aye.
Motion carried to approve Resolution 2019-20 with Mayor Green absent.
Thank you. Moving on to item 12, it's a resolution, the adoption of Resolution 2019-21 to establish fees and charges for state-required fire inspection and municipal services. And our code enforcement supervisor, Mrs. Dixon, is going to give us some information.
So this resolution is to establish the fees and charges for the California required fire inspection municipal services. Currently, we had brought and discussed a life safety ordinance at the past council meetings, and after taking a further look into our Riverside County CAL FIRE contract, it was determined that we already have the ability to perform the fire inspections as long as it falls under a California state certified fire marshal. We do have the capability and the lead inspector through Interwest, our current contract, Julie Kunze, and she will be overseeing the program and conducting the inspections with our code enforcement officer staff. This fee was established primarily through our current and recent fee study. It is set at $91 for the first inspection to include one follow-up visit for that cost of service. If additional inspections are required, there will be additional fees that are charged at $61 per visit thereafter. That's to make sure that, again, we fall in line with our current fee study that is requesting 100% cost recovery for the services. I do want to point out that with this adoption and resolution, we did also include, to remain in line with the other fees on the schedule, the CPI escalator. Any questions?
Questions?
I think I mentioned this with you, Chris. I know you don't have the exact numbers, but this cost is actually a lot cheaper than it would have been with CAL FIRE. Is that correct?
That is.
That is
Do we have a number on that?
roughly 156.
So we're at 91 versus 156. So this is actually a cost saving as well.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. With that, can I make the motion, please, that we adopt Resolution 2019-21?
I second.
Well, first, do we have any comments from the public? Well, we have a motion and a second. And I believe this requires a roll call vote as well.
Councilmember Bonner?
Aye.
Councilmember Castillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Aaron Kranz?
Aye.
Motion carried to adopt resolution number 2019-21 with Mayor Green absent.
We're taking a 5-minute break right now.
So that's how we figured it out. It wasn't unique. Oh.
Okay, we're going to.
Thank you for the brief.
We're going to resume at 8 something or another. 8:36. And We're going back to item number 8, the housing element. And, well, city manager, are you going to introduce this item? Or is this gentleman up here going to?
Well, I will let our planning director, Jim Morrissey, take this one.
Okay. All yours, Mr. Morrissey.
Thank you, council members. This is kind of a continuation of the study session we had on May 15th, in which we went over the status and the actions that we were taking to update the city's housing element. We indicated to you at that time we'd come back at this meeting, or at least at the time the subsequent meeting, bring forth the document to you, receive input from you. I see several are out on the dais. To get your comments that we can weave into the document that we provide to the state. And it was kind of my reasoning that we move this agenda item to this point so we could just roll into the public hearings afterwards, which are part of this document and the actions that we told you we were going to take. So this evening, we're looking for feedback on the document. Ralph is here again this evening. So between the two of us, we'd be happy to try and respond to any questions that you have. Also, one of the items that we need to pass along to the state, we're going to bleed into your special meeting on the 17th. That's a reasonable accommodation or resolution. It was one of the items mentioned in the PowerPoint. It just wasn't on tonight's agenda. It's ready to go, so we're going to bring that at that meeting. It's not a public hearing item. It's simply a resolution indicating our intention of that. The PowerPoint presentation is just a few slides there. Let me just show you what they look like. So these programs that I just duplicated here, there's 3 slides real quickly. They're on page 2.8. So if you want to flip to your document, you can have them up close. 2-8. Just back up. So this is the overall organization of the document that you have in front of you. We can get right into the programs if you like. I'm not sure the best way to go about this, other than why don't we run through kind of an overview of these different items and then receive your comments at that time. Lastly, we did distribute out to you today via email, and I have some printed copies of the annual program report. It's just one sheet, so it's very minimal as far as the text and the length of reading. We indicated to you at the study session we would bring that to you this evening, so that is available as well. If you haven't seen it, I can give you a copy of that. I have copies with me. So with that, I'm going to let Ralph take over part of it here. You need to talk about this, so you want to flip to the programs.
Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, good evening. As we discussed at the workshop on May 15th, our goal was to prepare a preliminary draft housing element that the collective body could review at one time prior to submitting a draft to the State Department of Housing and Community Development. As you may recall, the last time that the council dealt with the housing element was in the period of 2010 to 2012. During that two-year period, the city prepared a draft which was eventually reviewed a couple of times by HCD, and ultimately the city council approved that draft on May 12th, in May 2012, and subsequently HCD found the element in complete compliance with the statutes. So we've used that document essentially as the foundation upon which to create this document, obviously including new information, addressing new topics that are required by the state housing element law. So the structure of the document is pretty much the way we structured the 2012 document, and that is to say that all of the technical information which is required to address the government code requirements are put into a technical appendix. And when I say government code requirements, the housing element law itself is like 50 pages long. So it takes a while to be able to cover each of the code requirements, but quite frankly, we dislike having to have city councils and planning commissions go through 100 pages prior to getting to the nitty-gritty. So the document, in terms of the appendices, we put all of the technical information regarding to existing housing needs and projected housing needs in Appendix A. The most critical part of that is the projected housing needs, which indicate how much new housing is needed in the community. And as we discussed last time, the total number of units was 83 housing units. So from there, we go into Appendix B, which then indicates all the sites that can accommodate that need, and we have to indicate that by assessor parcel number. And as we've indicated, given the pace of construction during this planning period from 2014 to 2018, the above moderate and moderate income needs, according to our figures, has been met. The lower income housing needs as a challenge has not been met yet. However, the overall number for this period is less than what was in the document that was adopted in 2012. So after that, we then discussed housing resources, which is a requirement, and that is financial and other types of resources which could be available to address housing needs. Admittedly, in this community, you don't have access directly to the flow of money like other communities do. In terms of community development block grants, you're not large enough to get that directly. You get a certain portion from the county, and I think this past year was like $18,000, if I recall correctly. So after that, we reviewed the governmental constraints, which are essentially zoning controls, permitting and processing, fees and the like. Also then, we then look at non-governmental constraints, which are the private market, that is the land costs, construction costs, and availability of financing. And based on the 10-year period between 2007 and 2017, the availability of financing actually improved in the community in terms of the percentage of borrowers who could get approved for a first loan, the number of borrowers who could get approved for a refi, and the number of borrowers who could be approved for home improvement loan. That all increased during the 10-year period. And then finally, we take a look at what the document said in 2012 that was adopted, and then take a look at what has been accomplished over that period. And that, quite frankly, is the last 2 pages in the document, and it does indicate a considerable amount of progress in meeting some of those objectives, and some of those are really the ones that are going to be discussed next in terms of the public hearing item by Jim. In terms of the housing element, we look at the heart of the housing element as being the housing program, which is in part 2. We take a look at 6 categories of requirements, and on the left-hand side is basically the government code requirement, which says what the city has to do in terms of meeting that obligation. In this example, what we're saying is we have 3 actions here, which are the SB2 planning grant, the no debt loss program, and then the annual housing element progress report. The SB2 planning grant is a grant that's available to all cities in California. A city the size of Canyon Lake qualifies for $160,000 and is referred to as an over-the-counter grant. That is, if you meet the eligibility criteria, you propose an eligible activity, and you meet the state priorities, you'll get the money. It's not a competitive type of situation. And in order to qualify, the city has to meet two threshold requirements. One is to submit an annual progress report, and then the second is to have a housing element that's approved by HCD. When I spoke with the HCD staff, they indicated to me that 1 year of an annual progress report would be sufficient to meet their criteria in terms of eligibility for this city. The second one, we're in the process of moving forward, and so we think we would get some type of reading from HCD prior to the deadline of November 30th this year for submitting an application. In the preliminary draft housing element, we just named 3 options that the city could consider. The housing element is not recommending a specific one at this time, primarily because of 2 reasons. One, staff has to communicate with the HCD staff and basically discuss the kind of possibilities in terms of activities and see how well they rank in terms of priorities from an HCD standpoint. And then we have to bring that information back to the city manager and the city council to see which direction they would like to take, if at all. And so when this document goes to HCD, it will basically outline that that's the process we are suggesting for the city council. And so we will, at this point in time, I don't think we can take an exact position. This is what you ought to be doing. The None-House program is a update of the program that was included in the 2012 document. It is updated because state law was passed in 2018, which made a little bit of change. What that program is basically saying is when you adopt a housing element, you're adopting it for an 8-year period. And when you identify sites, you're identifying them for an 8-year period. So you always have to have enough sites to meet accommodate the unmet need. So as an example, if the city has a need for 100 units and it has 4 sites of 25 units each, and for some reason it downzones one or eliminates one by going from residential to commercial, the council has to find a substitute site in order to maintain the site availability. So that's basically saying anytime that comes as a potential issue to the city, staff will notify the council so that whatever correction can be made is made. Annual housing on the progress report, but basically telling HCD that the city's going to start applying. So it's going to hit the April 1, 2020 deadline. It's going to hit the April 2021 deadline. And so that's the goal there. In terms of the second category, the first 3, 4, 5, and 6 are a continuation of programs that were included in the 2012 document. In program number 4, you have 2 households being assisted by that program. It's essentially the same number that were being assisted 5, 6, 7 years ago. First-time home buyer down payment assistance, that comes through the county. And during the past planning period, as we reported in the progress report, I believe somewhere like 4 or 5 households took advantage of the first-time home buyer assistance in the city. So that indicated progress. Mortgage credit certificate program, 1 household took advantage of that. Because of the tax change, of the Tax Act that passed, I think, in 2017, I really don't know how number 6 will fare out in the future, because what that program does is say, of your interest, payments over a year, 20% will be used as a credit against your income taxes. The balance of the 80% can be used as your normal interest deduction. But given the itemized, and that's, given the fact that not as many folks are going to be itemizing because of the tax change, I'm not sure how much that program will really be effective in the future. Program 7 is the accessory dwelling unit program. It's a statewide program. It's one of the priorities that the SB2 planning grant itemizes in terms of funding activities in that area. Currently, with no local ordinance, the state standards are the ones that apply. So what we're basically saying here is the city should evaluate whether or not it adopt its own ordinance. And I think we put a schedule of mid-year 2020 to accomplish that. But taking a look at the pros and cons in terms of where the discretion is and possibly the areas that might be looked at for ADUs, possibly the size of them and so forth. There's a lot of research being done on that, a lot of creativity in various cities throughout the state, so there's a lot of material that the city can obtain from other cities. Affordable Housing Density Program, that was a program included in the previous housing element. Since 2012, there's been several changes and amendments to that. So what we're basically saying is the city will continue that program and adopt an ordinance, say mid-year of 2020, taking into account what was required in 2012 and then everything that's been added on since then. Developing a disabled outreach program is a new effort. It's one that, in looking back at the elements that we prepared for other cities for the 2013 to 2021 time period, we always included one for that population group. Some years back, maybe 10 years, the state law was amended. It's always had disabled population as a group to take a look at in terms of data population. About 10 years ago, specifically, it was noted to take a look at developmentally disabled persons, and HCD strongly encourages cities to at least have some type of outreach program, and in this case, it would be trying to work with the Inland Regional Center, which is located in San Bernardino County and takes care of both San Bernardino and Riverside County. Program number 10 is an update of the one included in the 2012 document. The wording and the purpose is pretty much based on model language that HCD suggests be included in the housing element. In the area of removing governmental and non-governmental constraints, we are suggesting that now may be a time for the city to take a closer look at some development standards for single-room occupancy housing. And that kind of housing is what it means: one room, small room, kitchen, bed, etc. This government code specifically asks cities to encourage and facilitate this housing type. It is only, in this city, it's only a permitted use in the Canyon Lake overlay zone. That was the only practical area to demonstrate to HCD that that housing was allowed in the city. So we are suggesting here to go beyond just the very general nature of what's in the overlay zone and take a look at potentially preparing some development standards such as management plan, parking, minimum size, maximum size, whether they ought to be standalone developments or a portion of an overall multi-unit development. So that's a new one. In Program 12, Development Impact Fee Program. As you probably know, the city's fees do not comprise a large proportion of the overall fees for new development. The vast majority of the fees are the TUMF fee. When we last worked with the city, the TUMF was one half of what it is now. The other is the school district, which is at like $3.79 a square foot. And the other is the water and sewer district fees. All those vastly outnumber what the city charges. So what that program is suggesting is that the city staff work with the fee charging entities to see if it may be possible and under what conditions to reduce the fees if an affordable housing development ever was brought forth to the city council. Category number 4, County and Housing Enhancement Program. That's a new program title that basically consolidates 2 or 3 county programs. From 24, in terms of the previous planning period, there were about 4 or 5 households that took advantage of some of those program efforts. In terms of promoting fair housing, programs 14 and 15 are a continuation and update of what was included in the prior housing element. Program 16 is new. The reason it's new is because in terms of housing elements which will be submitted after January of 2021, they will now have to include an assessment of fair housing. So we're basically indicating to HCD that the city will comply with that and have a draft of that sometime around April of 2021. And that it'll work in conjunction with the Fair Housing Council of Riverside County because that entity does have money, technical assistance money to work with cities in terms of complying with this particular piece of legislation. Program category 6, the state encourages including in housing element efforts in terms of promoting energy conservation. What we've included here is the PACE financing programs from WRCOG. I believe since 2014, WRCOG indicated to us, I think over 400 homeowners, maybe 450 have taken advantage of the various financing crews for quite a bit of financing dollars. So that is what we consider the heart of the housing element. As you can see, we've updated some of the programs that were included in the 2012 document. We've added some programs as a result of state law and other programs. We think there's time for the city to take a look at a couple of areas in particular and see how they might want to refine certain things like development standards. After we take the input tonight from council, staff, and the public, and take the action on June 17th on the reasonable accommodation, then we'll be ready to forward the document to HCD in draft form. They then take up to 60 days to review the document. It may not take that long this time because they're not reviewing numerous documents right now. But let's assume a 60-day period. Typically what happens is around day 50, they'll contact me or Chance and kind of highlight some of the issues or topics that they have. Some will be able to clarify so that they don't get into a letter. Others will be able to respond in bullet points. Subsequently to that, the city manager will see the official letter. What we would hope is HCD would write a letter to the city manager saying, we find the housing element that you submitted to us in compliance together with the emails that we've exchanged, adding these clarifications and so forth. If that doesn't happen, then we come back to the council, work in more detail on responding to HCD, and then resubmit.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to quickly highlight on some of these items that Ralph has gone over, what we have on the screen, the single room occupancy. And the accessory dwelling unit provisions, we would coordinate, of course, with the POA, because as part of our development review, we request that, and they require not only a look-see on their behalf, but we want to see that they have accepted whatever the particular application is, so that we, if it meets our requirements, can issue a permit. So there's coordination that way as well. So if there's information you would like to provide us that would help in the preparation of the document, we're ready to accept it.
Thank you. Council, have any questions? Questions? Any public comments? Push the next button again.
Jack is the price.
Well, I look at these programs and that doesn't and shouldn't be involved in our community. We're a corporation. Our housing projects we don't have any. There's no room to improve. There's no room to build better housing places. We do have a large section of mobile home parks. That would be considered, I think, our low-income locations, but none of the other programs there I see fit into our program. We don't want to downgrade, we want to upgrade, and I don't see that here.
Jack, are you aware that the new governor had a personal meeting with Larry Green on this subject? On the importance of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think he's going to just blow it off.
Well, I won't comment on that. The same one that's supporting Proposition EE, as I remember.
I guess that's the end of public comments then. So do we need a motion to accept this draft or talk about it, or?
I move the motion to approve it.
Sorry?
Okay.
You made the motion?
Yeah. Approve it. Accept.
We have a motion to approve.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem?
The preliminary draft housing element, or what do you?
Yeah, we don't really need approval. It was just a discussion and feedback.
Okay,
At this point.
that's,
You don't need to.
so then, why do we need a roll call vote?
We don't.
Okay.
No, we're just, again, if I can, we're seeking input and authorizing staff to transmit the document to the state.
I just want to say good job, guys, and all the hard work that you put into this. And I know the state has put a difficult spot for Canyon Lake. We were on the hot list early on in regards to affordable housing and some of the other elements. And reading the report, which took me multiple times to read, you did a phenomenal job. So I just want to say thank you on all the hard work that you guys put in on it.
And I would like to add that I appreciate that you did do, as Councilmember Smith stated, a good job in a short amount of time, given the time constraints that you were under. So we appreciate that.
Any other comments? Thank you. I'm sure the whole council echoes what everybody has said here. There was a lot of work put into this program. So thank you for that. I guess now we're going to move on to 13, public hearing. This is for the first reading of ordinance number 183. It's for an ordinance for the city council, excuse me. It's an ordinance of the city council of the city of Canyon Lake amending Article 10.10.1, or whatever that may be, of the city of Canyon Lake zoning ordinance and amending Title 9 to add Chapter 9.27 regarding emergency shelters, as well as Chapter 9.28 regarding mandatory uses in all residential zones. We're going to open the hearing at 9:07.
Council members, Jim Morrissey again. On the staff report, what is attached in the, as part of the staff report, and then the attachment to the staff report that identifies the various definitions and code sections, there are essentially 3 items as mentioned on the first page. So they're to add the specific definitions listed, there's 6 of them. Add the emergency shelter provisions. We discussed that briefly at the study session, in which state law requires certain specific parameters, and those parameters have been bled into the requirements based upon information received from other jurisdictions. We minimize the number of beds. So we think we're fine with that. And then we've added in what the state requires for additional uses within residential zones to consider them a residential use. So we're meeting the requirements of not only what we propose as part of the new housing element update, but the existing or past housing element programs, which indicated that we would do certain things. I was going to say something else and that quickly evaded me. With respect to some of the uses that are listed, they have to do with the element of the family and the number of individuals associated with that. So when you look at some of the different items and the different definitions that that are applied to them, they come back to the basic element of what is a family and the number of people in the family. So as all of us would associate our family with individuals, spouses, children, this would be unrelated individuals of a certain number. And the state wants to make sure that they have opportunity to congregate, if you will, within a particular number, and not have requirements imposed upon them that would exclude them from living together in a small group. So one of the last items mentioned in the definition section refers to, let me just highlight that for you. Refers to transitional housing and supportive housing as a proposed residential use and subject only to those restrictions that apply to other residential uses of the same type in the same zone. So it's an attempt to say there are residents, you're not going to require an extra permit, that's an extra cost, that takes an extra amount of time, that's an additional burden. So they're to be looked at as a part of a, if you will, a single family residence and go through that normal process. If there's any questions, be happy to try and respond.
Mr. Walmsley, I believe, has a question.
I guess my question would be, what right do the state come in to our corporation and start establishing rules? We're a corporation, we're not, I'm speaking of the POA, which is our housing. And I don't understand why they would want to come in, and I would really say don't take any money from them under any circumstance, and run our corporation like we've always run it, and help and improve our people and our housing. So I just don't see a program here, and I don't see any reason for them to come into our corporation and do anything.
Well, I believe that's why we're always classified as being unique. There isn't any other cities like us. We don't comply with most of the rules that other cities have to comply with. And you're right, Jack, that I don't know how they have the ability to dictate to us, but apparently they're trying. So, anybody else? Any testimony by proponents? Opponents? And I guess, yes, sir.
I did just have one correction to the draft ordinance in front of you. If you look at the title, we're amending Article 21 of the City of Canyon Lake zoning ordinance. That's the section that has definitions. It looks like in the body that got changed to adding Chapter 9.02. So we can do an amendment at the first reading like this. I just wanted to put that in the record. It doesn't change any of the language, doesn't change how it's affected. Mostly it's a housekeeping matter until the city adopts its own complete zoning code, unless I'm mistaken.
No, that's correct. And
Okay.
it's Article 21 exists as part of the original county zoning ordinance when we took it over.
Right, so we will not be creating a Chapter 9.02. We will simply be adding these definitions to an already existing Article 21.
Okay, thank you. Well, I guess with that, we're going to close the public hearing.
Just before you close, I just would like to state for the record that the proof of publication for this public hearing is on file with the city clerk's office.
Oh, okay,
And
thank you.
And that staff is recommending a categorical exemption as part of the environmental compliance for the California Environmental Quality.
Okay, thank you. Then we can close at, sorry for 9/11. Any discussion by the city council? Gonna need a motion to approve the introduction and first reading of ordinance number 183.
I make a motion to, for the first reading of the ordinance.
We have a motion. We have a second.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. With this, I believe we need a roll call vote.
Councilmember Bonner?
Aye.
Councilmember Castillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Green?
Aye.
I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Aaron Kranz.
Aye, close enough.
Excuse me. Motion carried to approve the introduction and first reading of ordinance number 183 with Mayor Green absent.
Thank you. Well, we're getting close to the end. City manager comments, if you have any, please.
Yes, sir. I have quite a few this evening. It's been a long night, so I'll move quickly. First, I'd like to ask Administrative Services Manager Mike Borja to give us an update on CDBG.
Really quick, with regards to CDBG, as you recall, staff brought forward an accessibility project report on some improvements at City Hall. Council's recommendation was to let's move forward and see if maybe we could bring to life the home repair program with the mobile home parks in particular. Staff has contacted County EDA and is working with Habitat right now. We've revised a flyer sort of with the deadline in place. The county wants to give us up to maybe about a month, maybe towards the end of the month. So the application, or I'm sorry, the flyer has a deadline for people to respond that want to apply. Obviously, if they do apply, we'll move forward and it'll go beyond the June deadline. It's just a matter of getting people to submit applications. The flyer is actually in the works of being mailed out right now by Habitat, so we're hoping to get a response, and at that, once we do, I will notify council of what our progress is at that time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a busy month since our last meeting. I have just a few things I wanted to bring the council up to speed on. At our goal session meeting, which was held on May 8th, the council adopted a list of goals and prioritized them. We placed a copy of the final version of the adopted goals at each of your seats. Just wanted to make sure everyone has a copy. Moving forward, we will be including a copy of this just kind of in the back of every agenda packet. Just want to make sure it's kind of top of mind as we make decisions and decide what projects to focus on. Had a great meeting on May 9th with Rick Bishop, who's Executive Director of WRCOG. A couple of big wins for Canyon Lake came out of that meeting. First, this council had directed staff to look at how we might better track and apply for grants. And initially, we had included in next fiscal year's budget about $12,000 to bring on a consultant to help us with that. It turns out that we're going to be able to save that money because WRCOG has a grant assistance program. WRCOG has a contract with a firm by the name of Blaze & Associates. Blaze & Associates tracks grants coming down from the state and federal government for WRCOG members. They send us a table periodically with the updates, and we review it. If there's a grant that we think might make sense for us, we contact WRCOG and say, well, we're interested in this. If it's a grant that is on WRCOG's list of programs they support, WRCOG pays for our grant application, so it costs the city nothing. If there's a grant we want to go after that's not on WRCOG's list, we'll have to make the decision if we want to pay Blaze & Associates separately to apply for the grant. But that's going to be fantastic for us. Also, out of that meeting with Rick Bishop, we were able to be approved for the fellowship program for next year. We had a fellow last year. The funds for this program have really been greatly reduced. WRCOG was funding it through their PACE program, and those revenues have been shrinking. And so instead of eliminating the program altogether, they decided to cut it in half. And so they decided that any city who had a fellow this past year, would not get one next year. But I talked him into it. So we're going to get a fellow. In fact, we had an interview with a young lady who was chosen for us to be our fellow. Bright lady, great resume, wants to get into local government, and so she will be starting with us the first week in July.
Good job.
And then one of her first tasks will be to start our in-house internship program, which we now have room for those people to work. Attended the League of California Cities managers meeting, and then later the division meeting on May 13th. At the managers meeting, Alex Brekovich, our representative from CR&R, was the main presenter, and he explained to us what is going on in that industry in relation to recyclables, and how China is no longer purchasing our recyclables, and so the revenues that our trash haulers are used to getting from recyclables has taken a nosedive. Eventually there's going to be a real crisis here because they're stockpiling recyclables now and have no market for them. There's no place for them to go. So that's going to be a big challenge on the horizon. On May 16th, I attended the WRCOG Technical Advisory Committee meeting, which is basically all the city managers in the region and then the county CEO. The county CEO chairs that meeting, so it gave me an excuse to pester him about our public safety contracts. We've had a couple of conversations since then that have been productive, so I don't think we need to delve into that topic again now, but I think that so far it's looking promising that the county understands our dilemma and is willing to at least have conversations about how we might work together to fix it. Also at that meeting, I was appointed the WRCOG alternate to Riverside County Emergency Medical Care Committee, which it's really my own fault. There was an opening for the chairman position, so I nominated Wildemar City Manager Gary Nordquist, and then he turned around and got me back. So I'll be one more meeting I'll need to attend. Had a very productive meeting with Temecula City Manager Aaron Adams on May 23rd regarding the I-15 task force. I understand there was a meeting last night. Traffic on I-15 is really a regional problem, although the city of Temecula has kind of taken the brunt of the political pressure for it, and so they've formed a regional task force. I know this has been discussed in the past. As one of the goals of the city is to build better regional relationships I expressed that we would like to be helpful. Obviously, our ability to be helpful financially is very limited, but there might come a time where a letter is put together and all the cities in the region would sign on to the letter. He was thrilled that we might consider that when the time comes. Also, I know in the past an amount was discussed that we might contribute. I think that amount was $20,000. So when the time comes, I might be coming to the council for approval for financial involvement, just more as a sign of solidarity and being a regional player than anything. On May 16th, I attended the Southwest Counties Financing Authority, which is the JPA that runs our shelter. At that meeting, the budget was approved, and Murrieta Councilman Jonathan Ingram was appointed as chair. Had lunch with Murrieta Councilman Jonathan Ingram on the 24th to discuss RCA issues, and in particular as it relates to the BLM land. It was a productive meeting. He wants to be very helpful as the chair of RCA. And in fact, I have a meeting on the 18th with the representative from the BLM to discuss where we are in that process. On the 29th, I presented at the Southwest Riverside County Association of Realtors breakfast with the city managers. It was all the city managers throughout the region. Each one of us gave about a 20-minute presentation on our cities. It was the 9th time they've put this on, and apparently it was the first time Canyon Lake has ever been represented. So it was a great opportunity to continue building relationships with the city managers of our neighboring cities. We've had lots of public safety discussions. I guess we can go into that more in depth on the 17th. And an update on our office. We're now completely out of the old space we're using for enforcement department and our conference room. That lease has been terminated, so we have cost savings there. And lastly, I think we need to discuss whether or not we want to go dark in July. It's a topic that's been brought up at the last couple of city council meetings. We have put a lot on tonight's agenda, and aside from the special meeting we're having on the 17th, in terms of items that need to be approved by the city council, there's really nothing that's urgent in the next month or so. So staff's recommendation is that we can go dark in July if that is the wish of the city council. And that's all I have to say.
Well, I don't know about the rest of the council, but that would be my preference, to go dark in July and continue in August with the full load that you're telling we're going to have. That's still with the rest of the council.
That's also my preference.
Yeah, your
That's
preference.
also my preference.
Well, there's 3 that says it's okay, Randy,
It's fine with me.
and we're dark in July.
Very dark in July.
Okay, before we go on to council member comments, I just wanted to piggyback on something that you started with. You mentioned city council goals. And I think if there's any way possible, since we've accomplished some of these goals already, could we add one that Mrs. Nancy Horton had suggested, that we consider talking about water, which she thinks is very important, and I think it's important to the council. I don't know if this is appropriate to ask that or to amend what we've done, but I'm asking.
Certainly. I just ask that we be a little bit more specific about what that goal is, what the council would like to see done, as opposed to being just broadly water, but is there something specific?
Nancy, would you like to address that for us? I'm giving you the opportunity to speak again.
There are several things that I think should be on that list of strategic goals. One of them is, of course, helping to prevent quagga in the lake, which means that water sources coming from above us. There's actually a turnout in Paris that has 2 valves. If you open one valve, we get the water from Metropolitan Water. If you open the other valve, we get water from the Colorado River Project. We don't want water from the Colorado River Project coming into Canyon Lake because that water has quagga mussels in it. So that would be one of the strategic goals, but I think that's too narrow. I think The broader goal would be that the city council commits itself to supervising, monitoring, whatever you want to call it, water quality in Canyon Lake, and to representing the lake as a government institution, because we don't have anybody else to do that. We're it. The council is the only institution that can represent the lake as a government agency. And then the third thing that I would really hope is a strategic goal is that the city would participate with the EVMWD and the POA in monitoring for harmful algae blooms. There was monitoring that was done the week before Memorial Day this year as well as last year, but we need to know that the beaches where children are swimming are safe. And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how many times we do it. I don't know, who we use. All of those things should be part of the agreement that the POA, the city, and the EVMWD were already well on the way to reaching when the city pulled out last year. But I think if you ask any member of our community, they would say the city needs to be part of that. And I think the reasoning at the time was that if the city doesn't participate, they can't be sued. Well, hello. Every time that we have had a major issue, the Bolanos case and the case of whether the lake was public or not, and the death of the Angela Wright, who died on December 22nd, 2011, the city was sued. And the city was the last man standing in the case of the death of Angela Wright. Go figure. But that's the way it is. That's the reality. The city will be sued. So you might as well do your due diligence. You might as well have evidence that you did everything that you could. I think that's how you get to be home free. So those are the three things. If you want me to put this in an email and send it to you, and somebody much smarter than I can put it into one goal, it can be real simple. The city has the responsibility for water quality in Canyon Lake. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you should send it to the water committee.
Well, and I think I'd be very interested in talking further with Mrs. Horton. I think there's a larger discussion going on currently between the city and the POA and EVMWD about who really is responsible for what. We've been having meetings with, I've been having meetings with Eric Kazikoff at the POA and Jace Warner at EVMWD. In fact, I met yesterday with Bob Hartwig, who's the interim general manager at EVMWD. And in the past, there's been a lot of, I'd say, confusion and disagreement between the entities over who's responsible for what. We have a document, for example, that kind of outlines stormwater and SSO protocol. When we put up caution signs at the lake, for example, or if there's let's say a sewer spill at the lake and there are lake closures. It's a very unique situation we have here. EVMWD owns the lake. The POA has a long-term lease for surface rights and recreational use of the lake. So what really is the city's responsibility there? It's been a subject of some consternation in the past, and so we're kind of grappling with these issues. And I think ultimately this council is going to have to decide: is the lake a city responsibility at all? If it is, what is our responsibility? We have elected officials that serve on water boards who it's their job to think about water quality and where the water comes from. We have a representative on LEJWA. LEJWA also has some of those responsibilities. But these are all things that we're going to have to figure out. And I think the discussions that have been happening recently have been going in the direction that the city should be less involved, not more, with the lake. It's a strange situation again because the lake is the center of this community. It's probably the main thing that makes this community unique and that draws people here. But at the same time, we just don't have jurisdiction. You could say that it's a public health issue. and it is. But there are lots of public health issues where the city just doesn't have jurisdiction. Air quality is one of them. You know, when it's a poor air quality day, we don't run out and put signs up and say, hey, stay inside, wear a mask. So with everything we have on our plate, with limited resources and limited staff, we need to really focus on our core functions. And with this council's direction to staff that we need to be working cooperatively with other agencies. I just want to make sure that we're all working together and we all understand clearly who's responsible for what. And we're working on that now.
So it just opened up a can of worms there.
You did, sir. Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, and for everything else, of course. We're going to continue now with council member comments. Councilmember Bonner.
Okay, I'll make this short and sweet. The big comment on the last RCTC meeting was, if you may have seen the article on the Press Enterprise, but it had where the Orange County is bringing the 241 connect into the 91, and it's Caltrans 11 versus Riverside County and Caltrans 8. And they have a different vision of how that should be done and the effect it's going to have. So it's quite an article on the Press Enterprise, and it's going to get more discussion before this thing get resolved. But we should be paying attention to it because it's going to affect 91 and to 15. So we have to be smart about it. Okay, Casey and I ran the Finance Committee and the Public Safety meeting yesterday, so we had a busy morning. And the next roundtable, the City POA Water District and Law Enforcement is next Monday at 8 o'clock. It's October 10th. I mean, October 10th. Well, June 10th at 8 o'clock. And that's it.
Thank you.
All right, so I've been busy there. We've had kind of a dark month in terms of the water issues. The points made by Mrs. Horton were well taken. I do attend the TMDL meetings as well as the LEJWA meeting. We are dark this month on LEJWA and we will not be returning until August. One of the topics, I believe for a informational presentation, will be the LEAPS project. So I am well aware. I've been educating myself as well as looking into the resources that the task forces have provided on that on that project or proposal. I'm very well aware that it is quite a hot topic and one that is very controversial. So with that in mind, I do understand the concerns of the citizens of Canyon Lake in terms of how that project would affect our water. In terms of the TMDL task force, I've been asked by the task force to participate in the RFQ process. They're replacing Tim Moore, and that will be something that is on the horizon for me in order to help find a new firm or regulatory agency to assist with the TMDL task force. I was able to attend to Melissa Melendez's town halls. I found those to be very informational, and there was a great turnout from Canyon Lake, which I was very proud of. The other thing I would like to mention is, while I am on the water committee, I do believe that I do have some extra time. So if I know that sounds weird, but it's true. I think I have some extra time to the extent that if there is any assistance needed on the Veterans Committee, I am offering my services.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And is that the end of your report?
That is the end.
Okay. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to make this quick because the 12 of us that are in this room want to go home. It is 9:36, and I completely understand. The first thing is obviously thoughts and prayers goes out to Sparrow Green. I think we can all agree with that. My wife and I have been praying. I know most of us have, so I think that's important. And to have her in our thoughts along with Larry and the family. I think that's a very crucial thing. So I have like 23 bullet points here, and I'm only going to knock it down to 3. So I'm going to make it really simple. I had the opportunity, obviously, as I do every month, to sit on the RTA board, which is Riverside Transportation Agency. They got a summer program, which is 25 cents for students, youth to ride, which is pretty cool because even as a Canyon Laker, you can hop on the bus and make your way all the way to the beach. And as a young person, I remember growing up in the city of Hemet, I used to ride the bus, more of a sense of experience and just an awesome time with some young friends. And it's pretty great that they really want to push young people to get out and get involved and do some things. So 25 cents, that's pretty amazing. Also had the opportunity to go attend RCA on behalf of our mayor. He wasn't able to make it on Monday. And they do something really cool there. Every single month they do a featured species of the month. And this one was the northern red diamond rattlesnakes. I'm not going to go into it because it's snakes, but it is mindful to keep in mind that the snakes are out now. When we had the poppy bloom, someone got bit by a snake in Lake Elsinore. I go hiking with my baby girl on my back, and I notice that it's starting to get warm and we're going to have a lot of vegetation. So just be mindful of that, those of you that are listening out there. Snakes are going to be upon us, and if you're going to use some of our trails that we have, just keep that in mind. I was enlightened to find out that out of 7,000 bites, only 5 people died. So that's the pro. Other than that, I was looking under my desk the entire meeting, seeing if there were snakes. So it's a scary thing. But other than that, the Fiesta Parade was amazing. I thought it was well attended. It was a beautiful day. This community always has a good turnout. It's pretty amazing to see everyone come out. And Jordan and Randy, I think you would agree with me that wasn't there just more kids than we've ever seen before? Sure. Absolutely incredible.
There was more strollers than I've ever seen.
Yes, and it was amazing to see just the amount of kids, and just the community has changed so much, and it's so reassuring to see that kids are out and they're utilizing the facilities that we have and participating in the community. So it's such a blessing once again to not only be able to serve on the council here in Canyon Lake, but to be part of, I think, one of the best communities in Southern California. That's it.
Thank you. Well, and I guess it's up to me to keep mine shorter than that.
Good luck.
I have a list of meetings that I attended throughout the month of May, and it's just about every other day in May. From WRCOG to Melissa Melendez to the goal setting workshops to League of Cities meeting. I'm not going to touch on any of those. I was going to give a long, lengthy report about the meeting we had in Palm Desert with SCAG, which was beyond boundaries. And believe it or not, I took more notes than I've ever taken before. But I'm not going to go into that either tonight. I thought I would save perhaps for the next city council meeting. And I don't want to get into, I've got 3 of your favorite reports for Vector. And it just doesn't seem, it's not appropriate tonight, I don't think, to try and make more people smile. So I'm just going to say that thank you for the opportunity to allowing me to pitch hit for our mayor tonight. And certainly, as I said earlier in the evening, our thoughts and prayers are with his wife, and we're pretty sure that everything's going to be okay. So that's an old saying of mine. I always close with something, that you may or may not have heard before, but it's egg bach. Everything's going to be okay. So with that, I think we're going to adjourn this meeting at 9:40.
What time do you serve breakfast?
Your next
And-
meeting will be August 7th.
August 7th, perfect.
Well, this meeting's the day before my birthday.
Well, I don't celebrate birthdays. Nice job.
Today's